Well, good Friday frickin' morning, friends. Mark Holmes here, of course, with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. So let's get open for business here and let's wake up the football gods. Man, we've got so much stuff to get to here this morning. Jason Garrett, who was offered the Sanford job, has turned it down. He wants to remain in the booth. He's not ready to be coaching just yet. And we have more on Odell Beckham Jr. and why I think we need to be done with him. Before we get to that, though, coaching is hard. Coaching is hard. Wow. Last night, I did not see the Raiders giving up the lead 16-3 with 3 minutes and 9 seconds left. But the Rams, with hard to believe, oh my God, hard to believe, but Baker Mayfield literally ended up winning 2 touchdowns, including a 98-yard drive by Baker Mayfield, who literally just got to Los Angeles on Tuesday night. If you are right now looking at the Carolina Panthers, you have to be looking at them and saying, what happened? What happened? It's not a matter of him not having the ability. I guess you just didn't know how to coach him. How was he the third-string quarterback on that team? Now, maybe it was just one great game and the moment of being on Thursday Night Football in a new city with better players around him and having Sean McVay. But I don't know how much coaching up you could do with a guy in 1.5 days. And on the other side, here you have an offensive coordinator extraordinaire in Josh McDaniels from the New England Patriots, who looks like he's failing at his second job. Not only did he end up losing this game to a quarterback that hasn't even had time for a cup of coffee there, he ended up losing in similar fashion to first game coaching Jeff Saturday with the Colts. And you have to look at this and say, God, did we screw up? They were a playoff team last year with Rich Batista. I mispronounced his name, sorry. And they decided that's not good enough. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get Josh McDaniels. And it's been a disaster. Much like it was for the Detroit Lions, who had Jim Caldwell, who 2 out of 4 years had that team in the playoffs. And they decided, nah, that's not good enough for us Lions. We're going to go get a Bill Belichick disciple. Yeah. How'd that work out for them? Because they've been back to the playoffs since. Anyway, although they're building there now, finally, maybe after about 10 years, they're finally working their way back there. All right, so watching that game last night, we got teased a little bit from Amazon Prime with the Odell Beckham Jr. Interview, tape, whatever you want to call it. I woke up this morning and heard this, and I am completely done with Odell Beckham Jr. coming to the Dallas Cowboys, because Odell Beckham Jr. is what I thought he was, which is a selfish person. I thought it would change. I thought it had changed. This is a guy who, when his team for the first time makes the playoffs, he immediately leaves the game, flies to Florida to hang out with Justin Bieber. It's like you couldn't wait a week or two in the playoffs. You couldn't go there and celebrate making the playoffs with your teammates and stuff. You had to go ahead and do this. So let me get to what he said. Let's go to it.
Like, I don't care. Obviously, coming back from injury, 2 things before you get out of here. You ready to go? And you don't got to tell us, though we would appreciate if you did it on the shop. Have you made the decision up in your own head of where you're going? And are you ready? I
haven't made the decision, and for me, it's like I would like to be in a stable environment, get up 6 a.m., leave at 6 p.m. for 4 weeks, and then let's talk about it. I've played football for a long time. Like, I'm not saying that I couldn't step in and play regular season, but I don't see the point. I really don't. Like, I would rather play when that pressure's on. I would rather play when the lights is on. Like, I went through the whole playoffs, and after having my first bad playoff experience, like, all I was ready for was to clear that off my name.
That bad playoff experience was partially you. Your ass went to Miami and hung out for the first couple of days of the week, came back home, proceeded to go to Green Bay and make a spectacle of yourself out there in cold-ass weather, out like the cold don't bother me, you know, in shorts and no shirt in like 5-degree weather, and proceeded to do absolutely nothing to help your team. That's the Odell that I've been thinking about, but thought he had left. But what you just said, I don't need to play in the regular season. I'm going to let all of these other guys do the dirty work. Because you talk about, you know, possibly important games. Going down the stretch right now, the Cowboys are hoping to get back at the Eagles and win the division. The Giants, if you're picking them, they may be clawing and scratching to make the playoffs. The Buffalo Bills, they play the Jets, are in a dogfight to win their division. So you're just going to let somebody else do the dirty work and just show up for the good times? Is that what you're saying? Because you should be part of trying to get that team there to be in the best position they can be when they get there. Yeah, you know, this is, I tell you what, let me calm down here for a second. But I tell you what this reminds me of. My brother Tony, who I miss a lot. I have regrets that I did not spend more time with my family, and my brother especially. Tony had these two, I guess they were sheepdogs, Moose and Albert. Moose was smaller and older. They were the same kind of dogs. Albert was young and much bigger. And my brother trained these dogs so good. My brother could put a piece of raw meat on their paws, and they would not touch it until he said go. These two dogs were totally different, okay? He could go through, and it was kind of funny because you had Albert and Moose, they'd sit side by side, and he'd go bang at the head of Albert, and Albert would duck, and then Moose would roll over and die. I remember being in Maryland on the water, on the bay, and Tony would throw a stick, right? Boom, throw a stick in the water. Albert would stay right there. Moose would go flying into the water. You know, he'd go out there, get in the sand and the dirt and everything else, swim out there. This is an old dog. And grab the stick and be bringing it back just so excited as can be. While Albert just literally just sat right there. He sat there watching Moose do all the work. And then when Moose is about to give it to Tony, Albert would go, rawr. Moose would drop it, and Albert would pick it up and hand it to him. He'd take the credit for all the work that Moose did. That's literally what Odell Beckham Jr. just said. And maybe I'm old school. Maybe you guys are okay with, this bullshit that we have now in the world. Because see, here's the difference of what I learned growing up versus what you guys have right now. Everybody's looking for that easy way that I'm deserving, I'm owed something, and it should just be handed to me. This is the same bullshit that we got from Jason Garrett, where basically, we'd lose and he'd pat everybody on the, I'm proud of these guys. Bullshit. This is the same bullshit where everybody gets a damn trophy. Well, guess what? Not everybody in life deserves a damn trophy. You got to go out and earn that shit. If you are physically able to actually get out on that field and put in the work and be in there sweating and busting your ass with those other guys, then you should be out there doing just that. Don't just be there for the good times. That is a fair weather friend. That's the one, as the old song says, when you got money, you got lots of friends. When you don't, they don't come around. That's Odell Beckham Jr. That is Odell Beckham Jr. I'm only here so I can play in the limelight and get me a ring. I'm not here to do all the hard work. You guys do that, and you guys praise me. Screw that. Screw that. That's some bullshit. And if the Cowboys sign him after him saying that, nah, Mel. Nah, bro. Nah, bro. That don't fly with me. I could play, but why should I? Because playoffs begin before playoffs. You are battling right now. This week, every single game is important. Yeah, I'm done with the Odell Beckham Jr. Screw that. Screw that. You know what? I'm not wasting any more brain cells on that. If Jerry Jones, I hope Jerry Jones heard that and took it the same way I did. You know, it's one thing if he can't. If they literally said, you know, it's just not ready. It's not going to be ready. And you can't. But if you're telling me I could, but why should I? In fact, if you could or should be able to, you should be there now trying to do everything you can to get back on the field and learn everything about the offense. No. I want to do a flashback. I want to do a flashback to what happens with the Cowboys. I want to flashback to before the Minnesota Vikings game and try and calm down because I got my blood pressure up on that one. I got my blood pressure up on that one. It's just funny how do you trust Dak Prescott to lead the Cowboys deep in the playoffs? This was after the Packers game. Let's listen to this for a second while I take a step back.
I was here and I had Tad on my show and he put his top 10 list when I said he wasn't top 10. It's not a knock on him, you know. It's not nothing wrong with being Jimmy Butler in the NBA, right? He's a good player, but he has to show us that he can step up and he can elevate his team when the guy across from him is considered a upper echelon quarterback. Listen, I've always said like the mark of if you're above Kirk Cousins, you're good. If you're below him, then you're average. And right now, Kirk Cousins is playing at a level we haven't seen him play at underneath this new offense. They're going to get a lot of the same with Dalvin Cook and running the football. Justin Jefferson might be the best receiver in the game. So Dak is going to have to answer. He's going to have to respond because this isn't going to be one of those games where the defense of Dallas is just going to be able to dominate. You see what they're getting desperate because they made some additions on the defensive line. They thought Hankins was enough. That wasn't enough. They went out and got one of Dan Quinn's former teammates, Tariq, I forget his name. They hired another defensive lineman.
Right.
They're afraid that teams can run the ball on them, and that neutralizes Michael Parsons.
Well, look, I mean, so that maybe this becomes more of a Dalvin Cook game than it is a Justin Jefferson game. One where it's an interesting way you look at it. Kirk Cousins, you know, they call it the Mendoza line in baseball. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the Cousins line in football. You got to be above that. I mean, we all think Dak is above that, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know that the Cowboys are favored in this game? Do you know that the Vikings are 8-1 coming off one of the biggest wins in the NFL this entire season? They're playing at home, and the Cowboys are a 1.5-point favorite on the road.
That's kind of crazy. But the fate of the Cowboys relies on Dak. The fate of this team relies on his performance.
How so?
How so? You look at the Packers game. Those 2 interceptions were costly. That was the game. Basically the game. That's points. So if the Dallas Cowboys have expectations and aspirations to become Super Bowl champions, it relies on the quarterback. It relies on Dak to be a top 10 quarterback, not to be average. If he's an average quarterback and he makes the plays like we saw against Green Bay, they are not going to have a deep playoff run. They're not going to be a Super Bowl team. So for the Cowboys to go to a Super Bowl, Dak has to be a superstar. He cannot be average. If he's average, they're just an average team.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, I think you can go to the Super Bowl with average quarterback play, but it's really hard. And
you have to not making that much money because the supporting cast isn't what he had last year.
What do you think?
I thought Jimmy Butler was a great comparison because he is a guy that has elevated his team, right, beyond where a lot of people thought it would go. And he is a guy that has taken teams to the finals, even if you don't call him a top. So, yeah, I think Dak has to be that guy. Look, I mean, I think Ezekiel Elliott could be back this week. Maybe they hold him out one more week because they have the Thanksgiving game. But, you know, that makes them more whole in the run game, so they can maybe, you know, lean on that even more than as much as people wanted them to in the fourth quarter last week. You know, I think that the thing to watch is the defense. I mean, Dak, I think, is going to be Dak. You had a 28-14 lead in the fourth quarter. The defense has to hold it. DeMarcus Lawrence listed as a did not practice yesterday. I mean, if you're banged up on that defensive line, then Dallas is going to have a lot of problems that Dak can't overcome.
There are a variety of reasons they lost that game, and I get it. The defense is supposed to hold a 2-touchdown lead, but the offense has to stay on the field a little more. They only ran 14 plays from that point forward. So there's a little bit of everything that goes into a loss that painful. Meanwhile, what does the table think? Let's take a look at the picks. All right, but once again, we are split. Once again, the wrong side of the table is the Cowboys over here. The players like the Vikings. You're riding with Minnesota.
Minnesota, when you have a win like you had last week, the momentum is on your side. You start believing that you're a team of destiny. Like that was a quality win against a great opponent, arguably the best opponent in all of football. I understand there was a little luck involved in it, but sometimes better be lucky than good. This team is confident. You know, this team is playing at a high level, and they have bona fide superstars. And Kirk Cousins is playing, I believe, at an MVP caliber level, and we have to start giving him credit and stop saying that he's solar powered.
You know what? When Michael Irvin said before the season that his MVP was Kirk Cousins, we all laughed a little bit. Maybe Michael is going to wind up laughing last.
Okay,
Thank you for watching ESPN.
Funny how the Cowboys beat them 40-3, and still the Cowboys get no respect. The Cowboys beat them 40-3. They destroyed Kirk Cousins and his great offense. But somehow, doesn't mean anything. Yeah. All right, good people. Time for me to go to work. I got work in the workshop to do and running around, and we're going to get the big sub, of course, tomorrow. We're going to do a taco sub, a shrimp and steak taco sub. Yeah, it's going to be like that. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you guys, as well as you ladies, and I'll see you soon.
Our coach here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Sports Report.